Have you ever camped on the Devil's Lake? He has 4 suits to offer, but just one you will take. The diamond suit shimmers and the heart wants your blood, and the spade suit could help dig you out of the mud. But you picked the least haunted Campfire Club. You picked the least haunted Campfire Club. This suit is made to promote a spooky chattering and narrative variation, much like optical scattering. So let's suit up and go clubbing by ourselves in our beds while sugar plum skeletons dance in our heads.
Good evening to all of my fellow humans, non-humans, and any thinking machines who may be viewing this video in some attempt to finagle and scam the algorithms. Welcome to another episode of the Least Haunted Campfire Club. Garth is on vacation, so I will be filling in for him, although we may be hearing from him by the end of this episode. Tonight we bring you 2 original tales of horror and terror and other things that are spooky and creepy, unnatural maybe. We'll find out what happens when a traveler goes places he shouldn't be going and messing with certain people that he also should not be associating with. Then we bring you the horrifying story of a person finding themselves lost in a place that they've been to many times before. And what are the implications of that god-awful screaming? So, without further ado, we bring you our first tale of the evening. Please enjoy an original offering from Billy Joseph Jr., entitled Under the Veil.
Signore e signori, questo è il personale di cabina. Si prega di assicurarsi che le cinture di sicurezza siano allacciate, i sedili e i tavolini siano in posizione verticale e tutti i dispositivi elettronici siano spenti durante la discesa e l'atterraggio. Grazie per aver volato con noi oggi.
Ladies and gentlemen, this is your cabin crew. Please ensure your seat belts are fastened. Your seat backs and tray tables are in their upright position, and all electronic devices are turned off for our descent and landing. Thank you for flying with us today, is repeated by the flight attendant in English. Peering out the window, Dylan can see Mount Etna, contrasting the deep blue sky. A plume of black smoke towers above the cone before spreading out like a dark veil floating in the air, blocking the sunlight beneath it. Ladies and gentlemen, you may be aware of the activity at nearby Etna. In the event the winds shift, we will have to abort our landing and return to Rome. Please stay seated with seat belts fastened, the captain announces in Italian first, followed by English. It's 2 hours, the woman in the seat beside him says with her strong Sicilian accent. Feels like I can reach out and touch it, Dylan says. We'll burn you, the woman chuckles, as she wraps the top of her head with a colorful silk scarf and ties it under her chin. Dylan's curious eyes follow the scene until the plane begins a sharp decline. The dive takes his breath for a moment. The flight from Rome over the Tyrrhenian landing at Falcone Borsiano Airport in Palermo is like throwing a bocce ball in the sand. Dylan's stomach rises to his throat as the plane descends, and to his chest as the pilot slams on the brakes and brings them to a screeching halt on the runway. The engines grow quieter. It isn't school, research, work, or even a vacation that has led him to Sicily. Rather pure and simple wanderlust. This isn't the first time he's found himself far from home and without much of a plan. Some people say he's adventurous, others reckless. Mostly, he has an unexplainable restlessness, which is unbearable if left unattended for too long, and sometimes lands him in precarious situations. His parents say it's time for him to get a real job. In fact, he has no desire for a real job. He could never be tied to one job. He's content to work as a waiter, bartender, or even janitor to earn enough money to move on to the next destination. Whether backpacking, hitchhiking, or jet setting, he'll find a way to get there. The money for this trip came from a modeling gig in Malta, until he discovered that the agent he was working for wanted to pimp him out on the side. He needed to draw the line somewhere. Vito was not happy when Dylan said he was leaving and forbid him from doing so. "All I've done for you here," he said. "Women, parties, luxuries like you've never seen before. Leave and you will regret it." Dylan left in the middle of the night, paid a fisherman to carry him by Faria to the coast of Tunisia. From Tunisia to Rome, where he'd read Etna was misbehaving. Hence his arrival in Palermo. He can smell the jet fuel as he steps onto the air stairs, in a line behind the other passengers, most with armloads of luggage. He only has his backpack, slung over one shoulder. Dylan is glad to have his feet on the ground. There are rumblings Mount Etna is about to have another major eruption, the first since 1992. Sure, there's been minor activity since, but this would be a sight to see, and while he waits around on the island, Dylan will have plenty of other places, things, and people to explore. It's the potential for apocalyptic disaster which intrigues him, however unlikely it would go that far. "Taxi!" Dylan tosses his backpack into the tiny yellow Fiat and climbs into the back seat. "Catania." 2 hours, the driver says. "Many euros." "Catania." The driver shrugs his shoulders, nods, and speeds on to the autostrade. Catania is one of the closest cities to Etna, and with the American Naval Air Station at Sigonella, there are sure to be plenty of Americans to mingle with. Dylan absorbs every sight, sound, and smell along the way, including the musky cigarette odor of the cab driver who hums to tunes coming from Radio Sicilia through 2 tiny tweeters, no bass. Towns, villages, ancient ruins pass as they make the journey. It's autumn, so a bit too cool to lower the windows, but the sky is a crystal clear azure until he looks toward Etna. The shroud of smoke grows thicker and darker as they get closer. La Terrazza di Catania reads an understated sign over the arched stone opening into the hostel where they stop. "Grazie. Keep the change." Dylan pays the driver, who speeds off into oncoming traffic. After checking in, he makes his way upstairs to a long, narrow room lined with bunk beds on both sides. There are only a few others in the room, all asleep. He hangs his pack on the rail beside his bunk and flops onto the mattress, which is no thicker than a sleeping bag. The metal frame squeaks beneath him. He's grown accustomed to these less than comfortable accommodations and falls asleep, exhausted from traveling. What feels like only moments later, Dylan is jarred awake by a slight tremble. He sits upright. The lamp beside him is shaking, and he can hear the sound of dishes rattling in the nearby galley. He rushes to the terrace on the north side of the building, facing nearby Etna. Others gather beside him in time to see massive pumice boulders pop like corks from a puddle of champagne. Orangish red lava spews out in a frothy foam to create a bright, incandescent hue in the sky. It's a mesmerizing sight to behold. He's near enough to feel the ground shake and hear the booms with every explosion. A warm breeze with a sulfuric odor fills the air. He can't help but to smile amidst the scene before him. Outside, Catania is buzzing. The expected eruption has come in the middle of the night, and Etna is putting on a show unlike any in decades. Locals, visitors, and American servicemen watch, mesmerized as if they are gathered around a fire pit listening to stories. Dylan meanders through the streets. The stories being told are mostly ones of previous eruptions by the older Sicilians. "Attraverso gli anni venti," Dylan overhears an old woman say. "Yes, Mama," her daughter says. "It's a different today. We have warnings." The atmosphere is one of cautious curiousness, like watching a lightning storm grow closer. Dylan's eyes sting, as if campfire smoke had blown into them. He notices the crowd begin to move. The women veil their heads in scarves, and the men hide beneath their coats as they take cover from a thin layer of ash. It's like a school fire drill. A bit of commotion, but not chaos. Everyone knows what to do. With people moving all around, Dylan is a bit disoriented, not having great familiarity with where he is. The ash plume has shifted to Catania, and it falls into the streets like a soft dusting of snow. The colorful buildings and storefronts all turn an eerie gray. Dylan covers his mouth with his shirt and looks around. Seeing Duomo de Catania, he cracks open the massive wooden door to step inside the cathedral. It creaks behind him, a thud echoing through the chamber as it closes. Upon the altar, a single candle flickers, casting an eerie glow upon the chamber walls. The light dances, creating new shapes and forms as it plays upon the nooks and crannies of the room. The flame burns low, casting long, wavering shadows which seem to stretch and twist like the fingers of the damned beckoning one to their fate. He sees no one, but it is the middle of the night, and the priest is likely in the rectory or monitoring Etna like everyone else. Dylan is struck by the soaring columns and arches. He explores the elaborate chapels, each one more ornate than the last. His eyes pan the frescoes and tapestries depicting saints which line the walls. Their eyes follow him, warning him. The scale of the room causes him to stop and stare. The city quiets outside, and all he can hear is his own breathing reverberate in the silence. Creak, thud. He turns to see the silhouette of someone standing at the door. Father? Aibda Messier is whispered in Maltese. The shape morphs into a man as it moves into the dim light and towards him. Vito. Dylan stops breathing for a moment. He can feel his heart's pulse throughout his body. The smell of cigarette smoke burns his nostrils as the man gets closer, their noses nearly touching. Dylan can see pores in his skin and a dark brown mole on his cheek. He has an intimidating face. His bald head reflects the candlelight as he removes his beret. You thought I wouldn't find you. Vito gets closer, his acrid breath stilling Dylan's own for a moment. Why would you look? You were an investment. How did you find me here? I never lost you. You forget. I own Malta. Everyone tells me everything. The fisherman took your money but owes you no loyalties. Me, however, he owes everything. You took the long way to Palermo. Would have been easier to take the ferry. His sinister grin goes straight. He lifts the cigarette to Dylan's face and twirls it in his fingers. Perfect skin. Beautiful teeth. Silky hair. He strokes Dylan's face with the other hand. You could have been rich and famous in Malta. Dylan tries to breathe in, but can only exhale, his body frozen as Vito's fingers wrap around the back of his head. He tries to break away. No, no, no. Vito shakes his head. He sears the cigarette into Dylan's cheek. Trying to break free from his grip, Dylan writhes in pain. The wound throbs like a relentless hammer on a chisel. A sharp, sudden pain shoots through his head. Darkness. Tick, 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 echoes. Dylan hears the softest drip of water as he tries to open his eye. His head aches. His cheek feels tight and is pulsating from the burn. He can smell his own scorched skin as it mixes with the moldy dampness of the darkness and a lingering scent of cigarette smoke. His mouth is gagged, and he fails at yelling out. He cannot break free. His hands are tied. He's strapped to the cold stone wall behind him. His eyes are open, but he cannot see. His long eyelashes tickle as they touch a thin cloth. His face is behind a veil. A bit of light appears, and he can see the outline of a face before him. He smells Vito's nauseating breath and can feel the heat of it through the thin cloth when he speaks. You come here for adventure, for some thrills. I'll give you your escapade. Vito snatches the veil off Dylan's head. The cloth feels like sandpaper as it crosses his throbbing, burning cheek. Before him is a macabre scene. A pile of bones in the corner is flanked by row after row of bodies, standing, each in their own alcove. Not alive, but not appearing to be fully dead. Dressed in tattered, aged, and dusty clothes decomposing slowly in the crypt. An old man, his mouth and eyes open. A child, dressed in a gown. A woman, hand over her heart. One after another, frozen in time at the moment of their last breath. Dylan knows he's in the cathedral's catacomb. His physical pain is overtaken by his mental anguish. Vito's fingers tighten around clumps of Dylan's long hair. He rips the locks from Dylan's scalp. Dylan yells into his muzzle. Blood streams across his forehead and into his left eye. The stinging makes him cry harder as the mixture flows across his blistering cheek and into the corner of his mouth. He tries to spit the salty metal plasma, but it only absorbs into the cloth, making him want to vomit. Your journey ends here, Vito says. He grabs a loose stone from the ground, raises it, and Dylan feels a sharp pain through his head and face. Darkness. A cold drop of water plops onto Dylan's neck, waking him. It tickles his back. Another drop repeats the same cycle. Fastened upright to the wall, Dylan cannot escape the torture of each drop. When he thinks it may be the final one, another. His back is wet, and his pants and underwear are saturated. He sits, his skin pruning, stinging from oversaturation. Vito is nowhere. There's only an ember of his cigarette lying on the floor. Dylan's good eye has adjusted to the darkness enough to see the shadowy, mummified remains of the old man he has been placed beside. His other eye now filled with blood and swollen. The ember dies. Darkness. Dylan wakes to the sensation of something nibbling his shoe. He can only shake his foot, his legs having been shackled with the ropes holding him to the wall. The vermin chew endlessly. Dylan is sickened by what he knows is to come. He trembles in anguish as the rats tear bite after tiny bite of his flesh. He can no longer bear the sensation or knowledge of what is happening. Darkness. He can see nothing, but he knows what is around him. How long? How long until someone saves me? His hunger pangs overpower his wounds. How long? Darkness. He wakes, numb. How long? How long have I been here? Darkness. He wakes, paralyzed. How long? How long must I continue to live? Darkness. Only darkness.
Truly a spine-chilling tale, and let it be a lesson to all of you. Just don't go to Malta. And now we bring to you our next story. This is Lost by Carolyn Day.
Lost by Carolyn Day. I walk the same trail every day, and I have for a long time. I know exactly how long it takes for me to cover 2.5 miles, approximately 45 minutes, so long as I don't become distracted by a bird or a squirrel, but I always do. I know how many steps it takes me to finish the loop, approximately 5,000. Again, so long as I don't get distracted, but again, I always do. I walk the same trail every day. I know every tree and root. The whispers of the oaks and pines are a constant companion. I know where the poison oak tries to choke the trail narrow, but a few swift slashes with a stick and it shrinks back. I know where the trail narrows along the mountain's edge, where to hug the mountainside to avoid a fall onto the stained rocks on the river's bank. I know the animals I'm supposed to see and hear. I know the local mockingbirds' repertoires consist of 20 different calls. Some days they try to trick me with the order they sing them in, but I know exactly how many I should hear. I know the angry snort of the doe as she trots off trail, back to the hide her fawn is under, irritated that I disturbed her. I always try to apologize for her inconvenience, as if she believes me. I know the gossip between the squirrels. I know they're bickering, always trying to get me to take a side. I never do. I walk the same trail every day. I know this trail. But it started to change. Something was wrong. I found blood on the trail. Blood in the wild is nothing out of the ordinary. Everything bleeds and everything dies eventually. The predators must hunt their prey, and in the end, the predator feeds the scavenger. Everything dies eventually. But the blood I found was wrong. There was too much, and the dirt surrounding it was undisturbed. There should have been tracks and signs of a struggle, but there was nothing. It was wrong, but like every day preceding, my boots ate up the trail beneath me, and soon I was finished. Resting my head that evening, my mind followed the trail in my dreams, and I realized the surrounding woods were too quiet. I didn't hear the trees, I didn't hear the mockingbirds, I didn't see the doe, I didn't hear the squirrels. The silence in my dreams was deafening and disturbing. The next day the trail was still wrong. Where the blood had been, there was no trace, as if it had never happened, not even a trace of dried red-brown stains. The blood was completely gone, but the woods were still too quiet. Several days of deafening silence. Still, I walked the trail. On the 10th day it became worse. The silence remained, but now I felt eyes on me, not the eyes of curious woodland animals watching as I walked the trail. That was normal and expected, to the point where I could name the animal watching based solely on the feeling of their gaze. The eyes I felt on me were a calculating stare, sizing me up, trying to figure out the best way to catch and consume me. The largest predator in these woods was a mountain lion, but their stare is cold and curious, as if they're trying to figure out if I'm worth their energy. I'm not. The eyes on me felt hot, as if the gaze alone would burn right through my chest and to my heart. I walked faster. The eyes never left me. As I finished the trail, the silence felt like it was going to choke me. I don't know how long it took me to finish. An hour? Maybe? The next day I walked the trail. I had to. The silence choked me as the eyes burned me. I tried to walk faster. More days passed. I think 5. It was hard to keep track. And still I walked and choked and burned. I wanted to stop, to roll over and die. But I tried to walk faster, tried to escape the feelings trying to consume me faster. I don't think I ever walked faster, but still I tried. The 6th day, as I began the trail, trying to act normal, the screaming began. Every 10 or 15 steps, it was so hard to concentrate and count. A scream would rip through the silence as the unseen eyes continued to burn me. An inhuman scream that felt like it tore at my soul. I kept walking. I tried to keep walking, but my vision was growing foggy and my ears were ringing. I tried to hold my hands over my ears, anything to block the screaming, and trusted my feet to take me down the trail I know. I stumbled and fell, not breaking my fall, too focused on keeping my hands over my ears. I hit the ground hard. The air punched from my lungs. Laying on my back, still clutching my ears, I looked at the sky and began to cry and scream and rage. Getting to my feet, I tried to locate where the eyes were staring at me from and couldn't. They moved as I turned around and around. I screamed again, "Stop toying with me and face me!" The screaming from the woods stopped. The laughter began. It shifted between crazed giggles to calm chuffs to loud guffaws. The silence returned, and a voice rang clear, deep, and growling. Now, little scrap. Do not take that tone with me. I will toy with you until I am ready for a snack. Fuck you, I snarled. I had been on edge for weeks. I think weeks, and my fear had turned to rage. Show yourself and get this over with, or fuck off, because you'll never see me again. My breath and silence held until a twig snapped. Something slid in the darkness of the deeper surrounding woods. The darkness continued to move and change and grow. The shadows would form into horns, and then antlers, and then melt into a muzzle, only to go through the forms again. The shadow figure laughed as it moved to tower over the oak closest to it. Do not lie to me, morsel. You and I know you are trapped here. You are a lost soul wandering endlessly, and I shall free you. My rage blanched, as if a bucket of ice water was thrown onto the burning fire in my heart. I'm not lost. I know this trail. I know this trail. I am not lost. I'm not lost. I know this trail. I know this trail. I am not lost. The same phrases raced through my mind as I backed away and began to run. I ran the trail I know. My boots sounded like snowflakes compared to the thundering of the monster behind me. It howled as its hooves. No. Pause. No. Claws ripped through the trail behind me. I ran and ran, but the trail wasn't the one I know. The oaks and pines cracked and shifted as claw-like branches tried to reach out and tear into me. The roots rolled beneath the dirt, trying to trip me. The screaming began again, and it was so close, so nearby, but it wasn't the same. It was panicked and scared. It was mine. I was screaming and crying as I ran the trail I no longer knew. I ran and ran, but I wasn't fast enough. The last things I felt were hot breath and sharp teeth, and then nothing.
Both of those stories had a unintentional hidden theme. I'm not sure if you picked up on it. But both of them involved people being eaten in some fashion or another. And now we bring you our final offering of the evening from our absent host, Garth. This is a poem that may or may not also follow the same similar theme. I'll let you decide.
Hi everybody, this is Garth. I'm standing here at the shores of Ho River in Olympic National Park, and it's nighttime below a meteor shower, and it's dark, and I just finished this poem, so here we go. It's called Olympic Peninsula Green. There's many a green color I've seen in the forest up in these hills. The green of the moss, like spinach laid in floss. above clusters of squirming tadpoles. The greens of the fern, tumescent they yearn for dewdrops and dew-knots of fog. Their green is of springtime all summer long, as they digest the wood of a log. The greens of the mosses and ferns all compose a spectrum that's the opposite of a rose. But deep in the mossy jungle primeval lurks a demon 1/6 as long as a weevil. This monster dwells in greens aplenty, searching for his prey. So use this wisdom I hath lent thee, and hearken as I say. Beware the water bear, dear ones, 8 fists of fury with claws of pain. He's been to space and frozen in place only to hydrate again. With sickle in paw and cloaked in night, he'll gobble up all he can find. On wings of a demon, this vicious fiend brings death to all our kind. We are wheel animalcules called rotifers, and these tardigrades are our foes. So be afeared, the day is near, you'll jump out of your toes. So tarry not, and doodle not, and lolly not your gag. Green is a color, not for which the dog of destiny's tail will wag. That is my poem, and I'm sticking to it. Good night, everybody.
Thank you, Garth. And thank you to Billy Joseph Jr. and Carolyn Day. If you have a story you'd like to submit to the Least Haunted Campfire Club, send it in to leasthauntedpodcast@gmail.com. You can either read it yourself, as our contributors have done this evening, or you can leave it to us to read in a fashion of our own choosing. But if you're going to do it, we suggest you do it quickly, for we only have one more, possibly 2, if you're lucky, installments of this season of the Least Haunted Campfire Club. So be here 2 weeks from today to hear our next chilling installment. Good night.
It's the Least Haunted Campfire Club. The Least Haunted